Hello and good morning.
Hello and good morning. One second. There. Hi.
Hey.
So I'm back. Happy Monday. I have an update I can drop in on the status of the supply chain connector and what we can report as doneness, like what we've scanned, how many things we found. There's actually a live local graphical demo to browse the results. Um, in short, it's what we talked about. It's all schema driven, TypeScript based mostly, except for some Python here and there.
Yeah.
Slurping down GraphQL, reading it in with DuckDB, and generating Ladybug graph
hmm
version pre-aggregated, if you will, into a tidy graph. Um, the results of everything we scan, which is inclusive of all CI, security.md, as well as locally found metadata, et cetera, all the things we've talked about all these months. Um, Secondly, there's a fork of the Guac project that packages, I believe, correctly, and that's what I'll also show
hmm
off on Friday, on Wednesday. Just in addition to the Guac 1 commit, the CLI that exports the Guac database that's derived from GraphQL schema in Go's ent um, orb. If um, and so from that, it also generates DDL for Ladybug DB, DuckDB for graphs, so that you can then just move data right from Postgres with either DuckDB and into Ladybug DB now that you have the schema, or actually Ladybug DB has a Postgres extension for itself, which is more direct.
Yep.
So whomever wants to use it, if their preferred interface is DDL, fine.
Mhm.
If it's SQL, fine. If it's a Python wrapper that calls either of those two client libraries, which use Apache Arrow under the covers to move data between them, also fine. Right. So we
Yeah.
we have basically these two graphs as an outcome that can get at whatever you put in them. And so if you run Guac from a CI workflow, or if you have your own instance, you can just do this without having to do a bunch of complicated ETLs. Initially, earlier in the project and for the recording and for history, we experimented thoroughly with and have a working prototype of something I called Graphtastic,
hmm
which was a whole model for doing this all completely on the GraphQL side, meaning accessing the data that's within Guac via purely GraphQL, GraphQL to
Yep.
GraphQL ETL, if you will. Actually, we were going to RDF because it's more efficient, but you're
We've looked
on
at
your own swing. But
GraphQL
that's the
tree.
history. And we ended up with this more modern, lightweight, you can run it all in a browser as an embedded database. Both of them are
hmm
embedded. Ladybug is inspired by DuckDB. So you have that core capability. The third graph is you need some organizing framework that's useful to the CNCF and to useful to projects that understands what a
hmm
CNCF project is. Now,
Yeah.
there's a multi-year-old graph for this now that was built in the landscape graph project. It just didn't really have. It was just like, here's a data model, and you can put the data that way, but there wasn't a consumer of it. I think it forms a good organizing framework because it models all of the entities that matter, and it can be added as a third Ladybug DB graph. So that project is
hmm
actually getting a facelift as well because it's dropping Neo4j entirely in favor of MIT licensed embeddable,
Yeah.
useful for a contributor that just has a normal computer or laptop. You can use this much lighter weight
It's easier to get set up and running.
anyway solution, right? So this is all winning, I think, as an outcome, and we
hmm
can present that, and there's documentation for it all. I can drop in. I actually, it's the same links, but I have a full summary of the project history that we can kind of present. Um, I also have some slides that we could go through, or I'd rather just send you.
hmm
But for what it's worth, I was away from the project for about a month or two, but I'm
Yeah.
back to finish it up and hand it off and figure out what to do with it. But I think we've presented a useful data set um, that presently has a bunch of the projects scanned already. There was one last thing. Yes. Um, as I'm sure you, Evan, are
Mhm.
surely know, but others that are watching this might not be
Mhm.
aware of the dot project initiative
Yes.
that's happening within the CNCF to kind of add yet another layer of YAML in this case. So, Hoorah, the supply chain security collector project uses as one of its workflows that's implemented in a reusable way and in a schema-driven way. Uh, uh, all of everything it does, but it has these other utilities that were just useful. So one of DuckDB's great um, plugins can parse YAML. So you can actually use DuckDB to read in these dot project files in whatever schema they are, and if it's well formed, super. If not, also super.
Mhm.
You end up with tables which you can then use SQL to shape, as we do for all the other stuff, into nodes and relationships if that's useful. Or in many other cases, if you just want to query it, you can, right? You can export it as Parquet. There's actually, I'm not going to go into this level of detail on Wednesday. I'll just mention it once and people can follow up. But much like RDF was an attempt to have like, okay, how do we capture this a graph
Yeah.
structure semantically? There's a new format that's come out in the graph world, so you can better have um, a canonical file that's open. For now, we're using, and this is lastly, we're using the innate inbuilt DuckDB and LadyDB
Mhm.
export files because you get a single file instead of a Parquet per table. Um,
Yeah.
so but if, for those that want,
Yeah.
time rather time partitioned version of the data in a way that they're used to so they can put it in Iceberg or whatever, or people that want to just hack on it locally or use it to understand their own project. They just have a single file that they can optionally persist. But otherwise, there's no
Yeah.
client or heavyweight stuff like the entire guild Hive registry, metadata store, like that whole giant stack, which is itself is an infrastructure. I don't want to say burden because it just solves a different set of challenges that.
Well, it's a infrastructure burden that may be worth it for some people.
Yes, but for this
This
initiative and
is
this project, it
yeah.
was useful to explore it, and it remains there. If anyone
Mhm.
wants like a fully working example that is specifically meant to do in Docker, so you don't have to run clusters, although you can also run it on your clusters.
Yeah.
But again, for the contributor that might just be doing this in their spare time, they might not have time to set all that stuff up, and they just need something that's turnkey. So that does exist, and there are a set of GitHub workflows and actions that you can use to actually just run all that as part of your own tooling. Um, uh, I'm curious what you think, Evan, if it's worth presenting that. Like I see it as like we explored it, but it wasn't a great idea. So like in the final presentation or the write-up,
I
I
did
think it
not
might get a
include it
footnote
in the
somewhere in an
present.
appendix maybe, but I kind of don't want to talk about it. But it was
Yeah,
a significant chunk of work that is useful for different scenarios,
I would not
particularly if
talk
you have
about it.
very deep GraphQL.
I would focus on what's the value that people can get out of, this effort. And I'm not sure that, here's the thing that we explored that we decided was too much work is um, if that's the most valuable thing that we got out of this, then yes, we can highlight it. But I think that it's not especially valuable given the other results that we've got.
I see. Um, I understand that point. I would also prefer, prefer, whatever. Um, I would also add or to answer the question of who would be interested. There are many organizations who have deeply embedded GraphQL into how they think about data and their
Sure.
business and all of that. And many of them are CNCF end users, right? They use a variety of
We
CNCF
don't have a
plugins.
lot of CNCF end users coming to tag security and compliance on a regular
No, 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 no,
basis.
no. You were. I'm trying to answer. I'll be specific. You had said like this whole GraphQL based thing. Like, if that's not useful to who we're talking about, then we shouldn't talk about it. I agree, but I wanted to say it actually is quite useful for an organization that has already GraphQL as part of their DNA and their tech stack, and they have business domain specific things in it in GraphQL that are findable with this kind of relationship information and semantic modeling of their business. So for those people, if they wanted to understand for the different parts of their tech stack what CNCF projects are being used or what projects in general are being used, it's not there's nothing CNCF specific about it. What open source projects are being
Mhm.
used, where, and you wanted to do like you wanted to provide reporting that says like for the main pieces of our business in our platform's vernacular, right? Or automatically, if you will, like for things in that ontology, but nouns and verbs, right, in their business that their whole organization already understands, and you're trying to report on security in open source projects, you know, um, projected onto that shape, right? So for those organizations, they might very much want, and that's what I was thinking of, this Graphtastic thing because it allows them to just stand up tools that just work because it's all based on GraphQL open standards, which are
Mhm.
fairly recent as of 2 to 3 years ago in open source time. Now that
Yeah,
you knew with the federation standards, and so
yeah,
that I didn't mention that before I said GraphQL
yeah,
Federation.
yeah. No, I
Yeah,
understand that.
but I don't think we should focus on it other than to not
I
you. What do you
don't
think?
think
Then
your
I'm going to
current
mute myself.
audience.
How do you think I should, and how much should I talk about this other piece? Because it could be big, but it's not where I went.
Um, if you want to include one slide of stuff we tried that didn't turn out to be as useful as we thought, you could include it. I would not give it any more airtime than that because I think it risks muddying your message rather than refining it. And I think zero slides would be perfectly fine as well.
Oh, I'm gonna do it live, but I want to do slides because they keep me.
Yeah,
I'm interested in all of this, and if I just kind of like
yeah.
ad lib
Yes,
it, I'll be meandering
I
about
think
things that don't make
I
sense.
think
So
having a story, whether or not you're showing the slides to anyone else, having a story that you know that you can explain from beginning to end is going to be helpful.
yes,
Uh,
and
and in particular, it has a beginning, it has a middle, it has a sequence of events, it has an end. There is a lot of different knowledge here, but rather than trying to make everyone absorb all of that knowledge, presenting it as a sequential story can help them reach the spot where they can see the view that you're looking for them to see. Even if you've wandered through the woods and know 20 other great viewpoints, you're trying to get them to a particular viewpoint, and let's take them on a route that sets them up for success, as opposed to gets them lost in the woods.
yeah, the way I kind of that's great feedback, and it's how I've been thinking about it as well. Um, and I think where I've landed on is the thing that we'll spend the most time on of the not very much time. This is just a quick community demo for 10 minutes or
Mhm.
whatever, and then some Q&A. Um,
I think you got
is
10 minutes, but yeah,
useful to those people because it's something that can run quickly locally in a minute or two. I can like fire it off and then look at it in 2 or 3 5 minutes when it's done. However, I think the full
yeah.
CNCF whole of all the projects um, is still under 5 minutes or something if you batch it and
Mhm.
do the defaults. Um, um, then they can just get data that they can use right there, either in DuckDB as an 8UI or
Yeah.
LadybugDB's built-in graph.
You might actually want to include some example
Right.
queries to
Well,
show.
so there were some questions that we started with
Yeah,
that we needed to answer that are the two big
yeah,
questions. So they have queries that will be preloaded that they can just run. They can
yeah.
copy paste from the README, or rather not the read. Yes, it's in the README, but there's also some expansive documentation with an index kind of covering with one line per doc.
Well,
And so it's hard to talk and show that stuff. So I'd like to just pop it into the meeting notes and to Slack. Uh, But
I
you know,
think
or do you think I should just leave it crickets for now, and then after the Wednesday tech security meeting, then be like, and then here's the, just make one delivery rather than two.
so. I might wait till after the tag security meeting
Okay.
um, to do a lot of the rest of the README writing.
Oh,
One thing I
it's written.
suspect, if you're
Yeah.
successful, will happen is that you will show some of these queries, and people will ask modified questions, and you may want to be able to answer those modified questions.
Yeah, interactively, kind of like, okay, well, here's how you would do that. Boop.
Yeah,
Yeah, I noticed
uh,
that when somebody was presenting a few weeks ago. I've kind of been lurking, but
yeah, mhm,
um I was in listening mode. Um
yeah.
yeah, I saw that dynamic as well. I can't remember the name escapes me. It was just in the last couple of weeks.
We call that engagement,
Yes.
and it's what you want. But
Yes.
if you come in
I
with,
can't.
oh, I only have these exact answers and I can't answer related questions, um, it's a lot less interesting.
Right, because then it's
Because
like, oh, they did a thing, and if I learn their whatever it is, then I can answer my own questions. But you've mentioned a variation of this before. But
well,
if I see that
maybe I
I
can
can
answer
ask my
my
own
own questions.
questions were I to run this, that is more interesting.
Well, maybe I could answer my own questions, or maybe I could answer their questions and not my
Yeah,
own. At the end of that effort, depending on how they structured it and what kind of data they had, they might not even have that information available.
right.
Um,
Um, yes.
so I think being prepared to say, oh, hey, yes, let's go try to find that together.
Mhm.
Here's what here's our base query, and then here's how we're going to modify it would be helpful.
Yeah, I was going to start with presenting the two questions and then a few more of my own to show that it's not hard to ask new questions. And I'm actually pulling from a crib of a bunch of questions of different types, depending on what people might ask about. And
Yeah.
as I've been thinking about it, because um, I've done this a little bit backwards from a traditional graph project. Like if you consult the docs, like the
Yeah.
if you look at all of, if
Yeah.
you look at current thinking on graph um, technology, there's a bunch of it that's about the technology or the specific pieces. But
Mhm.
in terms of patterns, you typically start with questions, and then the shape of the graph that you produce uh,
Mhm.
is sort of a pre-sorted join, if you will, of the data set
Is aligned with certain
to be
questions.
aligned with that, particularly if you're using GraphQL, because you're writing actual resolvers. So you're like, okay, there's a function here.
Yeah.
There's a question I'm asking. What is the question? In this case, we kind of said, okay, well, let's remove the artificial boundary of I know what the right questions to ask are, and instead I asked my question for this initiative was, what could we find out if we went looking? And
Well, but then
with
we
some
refined
effort,
it.
but not incredibly hard. Like we don't like spin up an engineering team, but like what can we reasonably quickly find and learn? And
Mhm.
one thing that I think is a good tagline I'd love feedback on is lack of. You might have said it, or maybe I said
Mhm.
it. I don't know where. Maybe you remember the genesis of this, but lack of evidence is not evidence of lacking, or some variation of that. Because
Uh,
we're just going to report on here's the things we
absence of
found, not
evidence is not evidence of absence.
that's what it is. Lack of absence of evidence is not evidence of absence. Thank you.
And I don't
Um,
remember who that is, but that is a
I
fairly
think
famous.
you used it in a talk at KubeCon that I watched on YouTube because I couldn't go to KubeCon, but I may have cribbed that KubeCon quote.
Yeah, let me.
But it sticks
Carl Sagan.
it comes to my mind now. But that's kind of the vibe I'd like to kind of present this
Yeah,
as.
it's Carl Sagan apparently.
Oh, nice. That I didn't realize that was a Carl Sagan quote. I'm a huge
Yeah.
Carl Sagan fan. All right.
Okay. Yeah, that is
Well, that seals
that
the
is
deal. Now I have my
that is not me. that is me
Nope, I
quoting.
am perfectly happy to use a quote I adore that happens to be Carl Sagan. So
Yeah.
thank you. Um, I know that you must have a busy day. I have a busy day too. I'd actually like to show you, well, I'll update the project notes. I kind of
Okay.
prepared a little like here's how many issues we did and here were some of the
Yeah.
trends and so I have that kind of a summary that
Yeah.
I'll paste to you first, but I'll
Yeah.
put in
And
the
if you
GitHub.
have some slides, I'm happy to look at them and
Yeah, I was going to structure it all as a draft PR first, but before it's a draft PR, I thought you might have a look.
yeah.
Okay. Yeah, it'll just be in a branch of the, well, actually,
Okay.
no. It, I'll send you a link to something.
That's great. Yeah. It doesn't need to spend you don't need to spend a lot of effort on it. I just,
No, yeah.
wanted to make sure that I was providing assistance with the framing and so forth because I said I would do that.
Yes. And I actually specifically wanted to follow the workflow of that and then to the tag, for another round of feedback. And then
Yeah.
ultimately when it's done, which at that point it could be, after with any guidance on next
Yeah.
steps that might make sense, then at that point, report it to the TOC, into the.
Yeah. I mean, I think we can open the PR on the README. I mean, you can do it before the meeting, but I think
I'm
after the
sorry,
meeting,
I misspoke. I meant solicit feedback from the TOC on the PR. There we go. Right.
I was
Yeah.
going to say, I think for the tag, the presentation will be useful and interesting.
Okay.
For the TOC, I think the PR may be helpful to
Well, that's their
narrow things.
language. Yes.
I'm worried about the TOC getting into uh, too much like distracting stuff.
Yeah. I want to kind of, yes, that's my concern as well. So,
Yeah,
yeah, and it will be done when it's done, but we'll kick that off.
yeah. I don't know if you saw it, but in last week's tag security and compliance meeting,
I haven't
Mike
watched the
Lieberman
recording yet.
did some interesting analysis of SBOM tools.
Oh, really? Okay,
Yeah.
cool.
So he looked at like 5 or 6 different SBOM tools,
Yep.
and some of them over-report, some of them under-report.
Yep.
Very few of them actually report a dependency tree. Most of them just report a dependency list.
Yes. And it's very compute expensive for some of them. Um, and
It
if you
turns
try to
out
scale
it's
it up,
hard
if you
to
try to
get.
scale it up to a whole giant organization, it becomes
Yeah,
quite, well, I mean, if money is no object and you want to just run compute blooms, one can do that. But I
I
think there's a
mean,
better way.
yeah. Uh, Tools that are not working inside the build process have a lot of trouble picking up a dependency tree.
Right, because they would have to go find it and figure it out and regenerate it.
Well, they
Right.
need to perform the same behavior that the dependency resolver in your build system does. Not
Yes.
just a reasonable thing, but the same thing that your
Yeah, and
build
so I would imagine are all of these by tools, do you mean things like Bomb or do you mean things like, Trivy and other commercial
things like
tools?
Trivy.
Okay. Yeah. Yes. Yes, I've
And
also
he had
found
a
that
number of
that kind
different
of
ones.
exploring the data depend. I mean, it depends. Like, I don't want to pick out on any tool. If the tool reports a bunch of tabular data that it had to do a bunch of stuff in script or code to generate in the
Yeah,
first place, it's not really malleable and explorable as well as it could be without a whole platform like, there's some in Apache and
yeah,
there's others that, yeah,
yeah.
like Superset, for example, or
Mhm.
something like it, that where you can actually get interactive as someone who doesn't know
Yeah,
what they're necessarily looking for yet, but they want to understand the shape of it, right? And so you have big files and it's hard. So
yeah,
that's interesting. Cool. I'll give the recording a look. Thank you.
yeah. I just thought that given your discoveries in SBOMs, you might find it interesting that there were a number of different tools with different trade-offs, and you know, maybe it
I'd
would have been
actually
helpful
really,
6 months ago.
I'd really like to look at it because we scanned for about 50 different of those kinds of
He's
tools.
he's got a gist if you just like poke him if you just want to read.
I'm sorry, my phone rang.
Mike Lieberman, Kusari.
Yeah, yeah, I talked to Michael a bunch. Yeah, but I
Yeah,
haven't lately. But so
he has
with
he
Michael
has
Lieberman presenting.
yeah.
Oh, cool, awesome.
Um, and yeah, it was basically a gist that contained all of his analysis and results. So if you
Oh,
prefer to read, you
yeah, I
can
do. I do like a
you can
preview.
poke him, and he has like a link he can share with you.
Sweet. Yeah, thanks for the heads up, and I will reach out to him. And I'll
And
also
that may
watch
be
the
easier
recording first.
than watching
Yeah,
the recording.
yeah, I'll start with the recording. So, thanks.
Okay.
Um,
Yeah.
I could return some time to your day. I don't have any other agenda. Well, I did out of order. Um, uh, I haven't done a camper van type trip in many years, but I like both, and I'm glad you got to get outside. It sounds like so.
Yeah. I think next time I'm more likely to rent a van and bring some tents than to do the RV thing. But
Yeah, the RV thing is a whole set of concerns, and all by itself, it's a whole thing, and
it's a thing. Yeah. I mean, camping is a different thing.
it is. I had a travel trailer, which I liked because I could tow it like I would tow a trailer, and
Yeah.
it had a lot of those things, but I didn't have to be like drive the bus.
Yeah.
It's not all of that
Um,
on top of it. So it's just a whole, but it is cool as well.
well, I mean, one of the challenges was that a lot of the stuff was really built and sized for adults.
Yes.
And so my kids couldn't really participate in a lot of the pieces that it would have been nice for them to be able to help
Hmm.
with setting up camp and stuff like that. So,
Right.
yeah.
Yeah. Cool. Um,
So
I'm
you're
sure
going to
this
present
isn't
this
the right
Wednesday.
place. What's that?
Oh, I just was going to record in the notes. We're going to present this Wednesday at Tag Security and Compliance.
We could. I also have the next Wednesday available if that's better. If they're contenders for the slot, like I don't. I'm just.
Which do you
Let me.
want?
I got out of order. Um, I'm just back in my sort of full capacity this week in full. I kind of started back reading
Yeah.
last week and
Would
returning.
would you
So,
prefer the 29th or would you prefer May 4th? I think it
um,
is.
oh,
5th?
I could present on May 4th.
I think so. Let me
I would
see.
like to do that. May the 4th be with you.
Well, okay, I'm not sure. Sorry, it's May 6th.
Oh, okay. Well, close enough. I don't have context yet because as I said, I still have a bunch of recordings to watch, not just for this tag, but for some others from my
Mhm.
hiatus. Um, so the following week is also just fine, but I would like to have the back and forth and show you what I've got now and get feedback
Oh
this
yeah.
week. But that
No,
that would be less rushed for both of us
I'm
because then
100%
we will have.
available for that. I just wanted to like get a date written
I feel
down to
like
do
I've
it.
been tardy, so I guess I had some anxiety about like, okay, we could do it Wednesday. Let's do it Wednesday next, and then we both have some time to
Yep,
do what we talked about doing.
6th May. Okay, great.
Okay, yes, that's
I'll make sure that you have that slot.
yeah, cool. And I just wrote it down on paper too. Sometimes if I don't write something on paper, it's not
I
actually
will, yes, I will also poke you next Monday if I haven't heard anything.
okay. Cool. Look for materials soon on the current status, and then the presentation stuff as well. So. They're kind
Sounds
of
good.
primordial now, but I think they cover the right stuff.
Uh, this is the wrong meeting notes. That's fine. Here we go. I was just
I've just
getting ready
started
to
exploring
get
some of the
five
automated note
signatures.
taking that they put in place. Um,
Hmm?
uh, for the first time, I've got like my notes that I'm looking at. Like I haven't. I usually don't do notes and talk at the same time, and
Yeah.
so I'm kind of curious to see what happens when we click leave. Like, do I get a nice summary already, or?
There will be a summary shortly, and it'll get posted, I think, as well to YouTube. But I don't remember where
Great.
the AI summary goes.
Yep. Awesome. Okay.
Okay. See you.